Today's honored guest is Daniel D'Amico. He's running for Westchester County Legislative District 16. Daniel, thank you for being here today.
Gonzalo, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Now, for the audience that don't know who you are, would you mind giving a little bit about your background and what you're running for?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Dan D'Amico. I'm Italian-American, actually Italian and Sicilian. I always got to qualify that. My dad would make sure I said Sicilian too. But Sicilian and Italian-American, born and raised in the Neck area, the Bronx. I now reside in Yonkers, which, by the way, I love Yonkers. It's an incredible area. But a little bit about my background. I mean, growing up, lower middle class family, working family. Many of my uncles were in the Union. My dad was actually a military man, and he went on to become a paramedic and also a fireman. He was a volunteer. And he just kind of instilled in us as a kid public service and service to your fellow man, and even just patriotism. So that led me, when I turned 21 or 22, to join the FDNY, the fire department in the city of New York, where I did work for about 5 years, and I loved what I did, and I hit a bit of a crossroad in my life, and I started a real estate company at the time and decided to go full-time into real estate, and have been doing that ever since. Fast forward now, and I'm running for county legislator in Yonkers.
Just to ease it back a little bit, you had another career profession before becoming real estate?
Yeah, in the fire department.
Yes, which, once again, thank you for your service there as well.
Absolutely, happy to serve.
So now, I love talking to first-time candidates, which you are a first-time candidate, and I love asking this question. What was the spark that got you to start running?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have always been into politics. Not active, not going to meetings, not member of either party, but I've always sort of followed politics, and I enjoyed talking about it around the kitchen table. An Italian tradition is, I guess, Sunday you get together, you have your pasta, your meatball, and it's more of a family talk, and it would always divulge into politics. So as a young kid, I always sort of enjoyed it. And then the light bulb moment really happened as I started to become a homeowner. And I was also a realtor at the time, and I'm helping people buy their own home and walk them through the process. And then there would be laws that would be passed occasionally, and I'd see how they would negatively affect people or positively affect them as well. But it seemed more often than not that it would be a negative effect, whether it be a tax increase or something to that respect. And that led me to sort of dig in a little deeper. And as I dug in, I saw just what you would typically expect in politics. People make a lot of promises, don't show up, and then also wasteful spending. And as a businessman, I realized that every dollar is important, and it should be spent appropriately, especially when you're taken from tax dollars, people's hard-earned money. So when I saw continued tax increases and then wasteful spending, eventually I got to the point where I'm like, you know what, I could do this. I know that I could do it, and there was a sense of need to serve my people. Especially, you sit across the table just like this, and you're talking with someone about the value of their home, and start to talk to them about why they're leaving, and they tell you, well, the utility bill is through the roof, the taxes just got raised, I can't afford to live here. And it would just break my heart, because these are people who maybe helped build the city, like talking Yonkers, right? Whether they were a union worker, or whether they're a police officer or fireman or cop. And it would just break my heart seeing that. So that sort of led me to say, hey, you know what? I want to get in there. I want to get in there for the right reasons, and I want to do what's best for the people at Yonkers.
So now you're running for legislator,
yes,
Westchester Legislature, District 16, and you have your outline, your platforms. Let's talk about some of them. What's one of the platforms you want to talk about? Sure.
So one of the biggest and most pressing one would be flooding, particularly Yonkers. If you know Yonkers well, it's a very hilly area. There's a lot of hills. I think it's 7 hills in total is Yonkers. And that leads to some drainage issues across the board. And where I live is along the water. And most of my neighbors, in fact, if I think of my house, all the neighbors to the left and to the right, their backyards have been washed away. And it's eroding so much that it's getting close to their house. And Yonkers, because it's elevated in money, the point where we are, although we're along the water, we're still about 100 feet up from the water. So if you could imagine, your backyard used to go 60 feet out of grass. Now it goes 20 feet out or 10 feet out because it is washed away with all these flooding. So a lot of my neighbors are elderly, and they're wondering, who's going to come and fix this? The last hurricane was Hurricane Ida, and it just absolutely devastated the back. They had to shut down the Metro North, which runs through our backyard, essentially, because of all the debris and everything that fell on it. And one of my neighbors got 8 feet of water in his basement. And as you would expect, every news crew comes, and every politician shows up and, points their finger and tells them what they're going to do. And here we are 4 years later, and nothing's been done about it. In fact, I just recently did a video on the flooding issue and how maybe 10 or 12 houses down the road, there's a big co-op building, and they had this beautiful parking lot right on the water for all their cars. It has been closed down for 4 years because it washed away, and there's been no recourse to it. You know, the drains overflow and the sewers overflow, and you can't keep up with the amount of water, but no one wants to really dive into it. So one of the big things that I want to do is have the studies done to figure out how to stop this, and then work on it each day, and work to save these people's house, because your house, you shouldn't fear that your house is going to fall into the water. I think these are basics.
You know, I know for New York City, the City of Yes was something to help, part of it was help the environment. Do you guys get affected by that?
You know, not so much, but what we always like to say is that Westchester is only 2 or 3 steps away from New York City. So what happens in New York City eventually makes its way to Westchester, and we try and hold the front, and we try and make sure that if it is going to come up to Westchester, that they're common sense policies that are not going to hurt our people, because ultimately the responsibility of government is to protect the rights of its citizens. That was the whole reason it was created. So for me, I kind of take an originalist approach to it and say, is this best for the people? If the answer is yes, then let's do it. Also, is this what the people want? Because there are 2 things that you kind of have to balance. Is it best for them, and do they want it?
Well, I bring that up because I know if you're not doing the surveying that you need, then that's a factor right there.
Right.
If you're building, if you're taking away the green space, those are going to be problematic. And I know a lot of individuals that I've talked to about, I don't want to say in your specific district, but let's say in Yonkers or in that area, in Westchester as well, that there's a lot of building going up. So
Absolutely.
That means for those buildings to come up, there has to be a lot of green space being taken away.
Sure.
And that would cause flood. And you don't have to wait till the next hurricane. For me, in the Bronx, in Crotona Park, whenever it rains, and or it rains hard or for an extended period during the day, I know for a fact I can't be taking the bus to go across the park, because there have been times where my foot has been touching water from outside. And when I'm in a bus, you know, that's some scary stuff right there.
Sure.
And I'm assuming if you're on both sides getting flooded over, I mean, I don't even know what you do with 8 feet of water in your basement. Like, how do you get that out?
Yeah, it was, I mean, thankfully there were crews, there was the fire department that came, but even just individuals. I saw people and heard of people banding together to go and shovel people out and help drain this water out. You know, one of the big things, at least along the water, is because it's a hill, if you could imagine the sewers, there's a spout that pops out, and then there's a big catch basin where the water comes out into the basin. Apparently, from a lot of the neighbors and talking to people trying to figure out what exactly is the issue, they said that the basin was never made big enough. And it's the city or the county's responsibility, and they also don't keep it clean. So if you can imagine, there are leaves, just like in your house, you have a drain, leaves sometimes cover it, that can cause leaks. Well, there's no regular maintenance to it. They built this big catch basin, and if it ever covers, the water comes down from 5 or 6 streets worth of sewers, overflows that, and then it affects everybody else down the road. So we've seen a lot of flooding, and it just really takes effort. It takes showing up, talking to people, and saying, what is the issue here? But in 4 years, unfortunately, like I said, immediately after, everybody's there. Cameras on, cameras rolling, we're going to fix it. And then afterwards, it's not my problem, it's the MTA's problem, it's this one's problem, it's that one's problem. And it's like, we got to address this head on. Whether it's your problem or not, step in and make the calls to MTA if it's MTA's problem. Make the call to the state. Tell them we need some extra money for flooding because people's homes are going to go into the river soon. And for me, it's always about advocating. A politician doesn't always have to have the answer, but they should be willing to at least find the answer, right? If you asked me a question and it really wasn't in my wheelhouse as a county legislator, I may tell you that, but I'd say, you know what, let me call the city council because I know the city council will help this. Or let me call DEP or DPW, or hey, this is where we should direct this. Let me be the liaison, the quarterback, right? The quarterback doesn't score every touchdown, but he knows who to throw it to make those touchdowns or give it to the running back. So I sort of look at politics like that. I may not have every answer, but I can always seek to get that answer for you.
And it's a great way to put it. Thank you. Now, what's another policy that you'd like to talk about today?
Taxes. Now, I know this is the big one. Everyone always says, every politician says, I'm going to lower your taxes. But, I have a very realistic approach to this. As a business owner, as a property owner, I look at this very much as a balance sheet. What are our priorities? What are the extras? And how are we spending our money? Just recently, well, the previous budget, I'll touch on that and then I'll touch on this one here. Previous budget, they had to raise taxes and they had to cut all of our services by 8%. Across the board, police, fire, schools, roads, everything got cut by 8%. And that was hard on me because I thought about it, and police, fire, schools, these are the reason you pay taxes. It's not like a line item where you can say, you know what, we don't need this. You can't cut police, fire, and schools. These are literally why we pay taxes. So when I look at it and they say, hey, we need to raise your taxes, and in return, we're going to cut what we give you, to me, that's a spending issue. If you collect more and you give less, there's an issue there. And I know that inflation can be the issue, but when you look into the budget, you find a lot of wasteful spending. And one of my big ones is they spent $50 million, or 45 to be correct, on EV charging stations. Now, I'm not against electric cars or electric energy or anything like that. But I do think that that should be a secondary priority. You shouldn't cut teachers' pay or cut from the school fund 8% while still funding electric vehicles. That's sort of like, hey, if we have extra money, let's build some electric chargers. Sure, I'm not against that, but you don't do that despite cutting police, fire, and schools. So for me, getting in there, going through the budget, and cutting any wasteful spending and working across the aisle, right? There's 17 legislators. I'm running for one position. So there's 16 other people that I have to sit down with. But being a realtor and speaking to owners for the past 13 years in this industry, I have a very unique ability to talk to people and make common sense out of it. And I think sitting there and saying, hey, if we have $45 million set aside for EV charging stations, that's great, but is this the best use of that funds? Like, for instance, I took that, and when I go door knocking, I've knocked on a little over 4,000 doors now. When I talk to people, there's a common thread of issues that they say. One of them is that it's too expensive to live here and you can't afford a house, right? Everything, your monthly dollar is squeezed so tight that you can't save for a down payment. So I thought about it. I said, if we're putting $45 million towards EV charging stations, what if we just stop that for a little while? We'll put it on hold. We'll shelf it for 2 or 3 years. But instead, we take that same $45 million. This way, it doesn't affect the budget. You already allocated it for EV charging. Let's just repurpose it. If we gave that as down payment grants, we could give $25,000 down payment grants from the county to help families. We could have helped 1,800 families. So I look at this as 1,800 families get the keys to their first home, right, and get to build wealth and leave generational wealth to their family, or electric vehicle charging stations. Like, what has a ripple effect more? EV charging stations or keys to your first home?
And the wasteful spending, you're not saying let's not work these programs. You're saying let's try to find a way to help more people instead of helping a small demographic.
That's exactly right. Like, for me and I'll stay on the EV charging stations for now, $45 million given to that. I look at that and say, okay, how many people drive an electric car? Like, that's a reasonable question. If we're going to spend $45 million, we should know what the percentage is of people in Westchester who drive electric cars. And when I looked into it, the only number I could find was 7%. So that means 93% of people do not drive electric cars. They drive gas cars. And I have people in my district that can't afford to own a car. They rely on public transportation. So I'm like, housing is one thing we all need. EV charging stations is not one thing we all need. Tesla and some of the other big ones, ChargePoint, have done a terrific job building out a nice network. Now, I'm not saying they're perfect, but these are private companies or even public companies that are doing that work already. The job of government is to protect the rights of its people. I think securing home ownership would go a lot further than electric cars. And not to mention, electric cars tend to cost more. I think it's 6 or 7% more, maybe it's 9% more to purchase than a gas car. So you have to be doing a little bit financially better to afford that. So you have to think, like, who are we subsidizing? Are we helping those in our neighborhood who need it the most? Or are we subsidizing, a doctor's second car in Scarsdale? I got nothing against that, but that's how I weigh things out. In my district, people can't afford a car, and then the county's putting all this money towards EV charging stations. So I'm like,
common sense, basically.
Yeah, who's helping the single mom of 3 with a 93 Toyota Corolla? No one. But if you drove a new electric car, you get, charging. So
now you said you wanted to mention the previous tax and this year's tax.
Yes.
Did you mention both of them?
I mentioned last time, last tax, but they just went through again this budget, and they determined that they have to raise the taxes again, 5% in Westchester County, because there's $197 million of shortfall. So here's the budget. Oh, wait, we're short 197 million. And yet again, it feels sort of like Groundhog's Day, right? The reason I got into it was because of the last one. They raised taxes and cut everything 8%. And now this time they're like, hey, we got to raise it again. And I think what I read was they were laying off 180 people. So I'm saying this isn't an income problem. Westchester County is some of the highest taxed people in the country. It's not an income problem. It's a spending problem. When you look through it, you look at all these sort of giveaways and pet projects like EV charging stations. Like, let's shelf that. Even the state just came down and said we're going to set some of the mandates that we said with electric vehicles. We're going to push them back another 5 years. Yeah, of course, because that's common sense. If we're short money today, we don't prioritize things like green energy, right? We may just have to provide for today with the hope to get to those things down the line. We're not against them, but we got to look out for our neighbors right now.
No, unfortunately, I don't know too much about last year's politics when it comes to Westchester. I do know this year specifically, and I don't want tensions to get a little high because it's about to on these taxes.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that you're getting hit with these increase in taxes because of New York City's social service programs, and we've increased our programs. So the state of New York is pretty much flipping the bill for us. So
absolutely.
First of all, thank you, but also, it sounds. I can imagine a lot of people from your side maybe a little bit not too happy with our side because of the situation going on.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things is that when you take money in the form of taxes, it should be the government's responsibility to be as purposeful with that funds as absolutely possible, which means look into any waste, look into any fraud, look into any abuse of the system. There should be a entity that looks into that, sort of, the same way they look into, government accountability offices. Like, there should be the same thing for social services, the same for all of that. It should be like, if these are taxpayer dollars, we should covet this and say, how do we treat this the best possible? If you're on social services, amazing. We want to help you, but we don't want to create a system that allows people to abuse it. And unfortunately, in New York City, it has gotten that way, and then the state has to bail it out. And then that means less money for the rest of the counties because New York tends to get the biggest bail. I think it was $8 billion this year or something to that respect.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so it's a big thing. And then in Yonkers, we're asking for like $100 million, and they're like, yeah, sorry, we don't have it. And I'm like, wait, didn't you just send $8 billion to New York City? Like, these are our people's tax dollars too, So it's one of those frustrating things, but what I always say is this is a football match, right? In American football. Not every play is a home run. Not every play is a touchdown. Sometimes you get 5 yards, sometimes you get 10 yards. And that's the way I look at politics. How do we get our political football a little closer to our end zone? And for me, if we can get 10 or 15 yards down the line and things look a little bit better, then to me, that's a win.
So we hit on 2 subjects already for your platforms. What's another one that you want to talk about?
Quality of life. Downtown Yonkers, there is a bit of a homeless issue. And I feel for these people. Genuinely, I do. The county has to do a better job with services to help these people out, to help them get off the street just for their own sake, right? I know a lot are struggling with mental illness. There's some with drug abuse. But the county really has to step up and fix that, largely for quality of life, too. If you want to attract developers, or if you want to attract and you want the values of their properties to go up, then these sort of quality of life issues have to decrease. So for instance, in New York City, there are certain areas where you had to sort of clean things up in order to maintain the $20 million condos that they're selling and things like that, because people who are buying those properties don't necessarily want to live amongst that. Otherwise, they're going to be moving out. And not to mention, just on a humane level, you got to take care of people. That's the whole point of government, is to protect the rights of these people. So if there's somebody who is living on the streets, then it's our responsibility as government to get to them, offer them services, help them to get rehabilitated and back into the workforce and back into residency. That's ideal. But we need to increase shelter beds, and we need services. We need outreach services, people to go to these people every day and offer them hope and tell them that there's help if you need it. But continue to just show up. I have a friend who does that in New York City. There's a lot of NGOs in New York City, and they pay people to literally just go out and talk to homeless people and offer them services. And I'm not saying that it's a one-day thing. You show up and they're going to say, yeah, come on, hand in hand. It doesn't always happen like that. But sometimes just showing up and loving on them. Hey, you need something? You're a little hungry? Let's get you something to eat. And then 2-3 weeks down the line, he finds that they're talking to them and saying, you know what, I am open to it. Here's everything I've been through. Here's my life, whether it be drugs or they moved here for another state and just couldn't afford anything. I mean, our Con Edison bills are ridiculous. I paid $1,800 one of these months for Con Edison. So there's many reasons why people end up that way, but it's our job as a government and specifically as a county, it's a county responsibility in Westchester to get hold of these people and help them, reintegrate back into normal life.
Well, I appreciate you bringing up the Con Edison, because I didn't know if Con Edison didn't go all the way to Westchester, but I'm glad I know that now.
Yep.
When it comes to, let's say, the drug epidemic in your area, I don't know too much about the Westchester. I've seen it going down there when I travel. But let's say for the 16 or the 15th congressional district, we have something called the Hub, which is between 3rd Avenue and 149th Street, which is pretty well known area. They do big business over there. And different politicians have done it different ways. Let's say Mayor Adams, when he first came on, he was pretty gung-ho, more trying to be on the right side where he was trying to get people taken off the streets.
Sure.
And he had a huge backlash with the lawyers coming after him that eventually had to give up. And, he backed down. What a lot of people were saying was, you can't just take them off the street. You have to have social services with them at the same time.
That's
But
right.
once again, there's a balance. Do they want help? Do they just want the drugs? Or, it's a combination of different things going on. Then you have Mayor Mandami this past year with the winter. He did a more relaxed, or I don't want to say relaxed, where he backed off more on taking control or having them removed from the streets. I think we had one of the highest level of death this year. People that froze to death, like I think about 10. God bless and rest in peace for the individuals. Where do you see yourself as a legislator or taking action on something like that? Because you mentioned how you want to work on it, and if you get the position, how would you go about doing it in your first term?
That's a great question. And my heart goes out to these people. To hear that 10 people froze to death in New York City is just, it's horrific. And, as a fireman, I worked in East Harlem on 111th Street between 2nd and 3rd was my firehouse. So I'm very familiar with the Harlem area. And you would see, very extreme things. And, it broke my heart. So to hear that, it's not easy. I think the big thing is no one man can do everything alone, right? So I'm not the one that's saying here, put me in there and all these things will change. But what I can say is that I will advocate for these people to get more help, to get more resources. And like I said, I'm a big budget guy. So I'm going to look through the budget and say, where can we pull some money off rather than some of these green energy things or some of this wasteful spending? Let's get our house in order first before we start trying to change the world, right? That's how I look at it. If our people are dissatisfied or there's specific areas of the county that are hurting, let's address those first before we go into party politics, right? Well, my party wants this, my party wants that. Our job is to represent people, not the party. And I tell people that. So what I would do is work with the other 16 legislators to come up with a plan, because I know it's not just Yonkers. I know Mount Vernon struggles with it, New Rochelle struggles with it, some of our northern cities struggle with it, Peekskill in particular. So some of these areas, what we have to do is get together all the legislators and say, where can we pull from the budget, right? Because we have a very big budget. It's $2.5 billion. It's not a small budget. And where can we pull some money aside? A few $1 million goes a long way. That could potentially solve the issue, or at least work towards solving the issue in Yonkers. So we can pull money, allocate it, and make sure that these people have the ability. So to answer your question more directly, work with the other 16 legislators to come up with a plan and to fund this. And whether it be through an NGO or some county-backed agency, we have to get in there and we have to pull up our sleeves and make sure that we connect with these people and maybe take a different approach than what we've been doing. Right now, they just sort of leave them on South Broadway and just kind of say, as long as they're there, no problem. And well, what about the people who live there? And what about those homeless people? It's not right to them either. We should be rehabilitated. And so work with the rest of the legislators to get funds and create a program to take care of that.
And have you worked with any of the county legislators before?
Yeah, not in any policy-making position just yet as a candidate, but I've spoken to quite a few of them, absolutely. So.
And you mentioned that you're not you haven't been super active within the party level. Do you see a transition that you want to go into?
You know, I do. I think ultimately the way I look at government, as I've mentioned a few times so far in our talk, is that the job of government and an elected official is to represent the people, very simply. So although I'm a member of a party, I don't put party above people. And I even tell family this, you know, I'm like, you should never, whether someone agrees with you and your family or not, your family comes first. Because the job of government is to protect people, right? So when people, I think where politics goes wrong is when we start to put party first. Well, my party says this and I got to toe the line. That's not what you were there for. That's not what government is about. Government is about serving people, not just your people. When elected, I'm not just serving people of my party, I'm serving the entire district, whether you voted for me or not. And that's the way I look at this. So for me, it's not about towing the line, it's about what's right for the people. I have a very clear vision. How does this affect the people? Does it affect the people in a good way or in a negative way? And raising taxes, to me, is a negative way. So unless there's an extreme benefit, I'm going to vote against any tax increase, especially for my neighbors, especially for the elderly that I see that are already paying $15,000, some $18,000 a year in taxes. So think about that. You work your whole life, you pay off your house, and then you still have, what does that come out to be, $1,400 a month bill just in taxes. You know, on top of every other bill that you have, on top of sky-high Con Edison bills, on top of high gas prices, you know, some of the things we can't protect or we can't control in Westchester, but taxes and being a good steward of our funds is one way that we can.
You know, one thing I forgot to mention to tell the people that the Westchester County Legislature is basically the city council for New York City. It's about the same thing, right?
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, some of the major cities do have a council, like Yonkers does have city council, but on a county level, absolutely. Like certain gun laws, for instance, come down to a county level. And there are certain things that are negotiated on a county level, and then there are city level things. So this would essentially be the legislative arm of the county.
Now, since you're running, and if anybody wants to, if the people want to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so if anybody is interested in either volunteering or just helping out the campaign, the best way to do that is to go to electdandemico.com. You can also find us on just about every social media platform, be it Instagram, YouTube, TikTok now, and you could look up D'Amico for Westchester, and you'll find all of our handles there. There's even a link tree, like link in the bio, that has all of the links there. So if you want to help, I encourage you. Yonkers is seeing an incredible revitalization, and I think there's going to be a big swing this year. So if you're in my district, I hope to earn your vote. I'm a big door-to-door guy, so I will probably be at your doors. But yeah, absolutely.
Right,
that's how they can get involved.
Appreciate it very much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. For those that are interested in joining, please feel free to reach out at Gonzalo Duran at thebigapplegazette.com. As always, thank you, and God bless America.